So here we are with the first slide, which is, as I said, it's called Overview or Precursor of the Philosophies in the Upanishad through 108 selected gems. So basically, we will have 108 extracts, and these extracts have been classified as Dwitha, Advaita. 1 minute. So these are the three philosophies that we will be dealing with: Dvaita, Vishishta Dvaita, and Advaita. And within the three categories, we have various themes, which are, of course, since this whole selection was done by a South African Vedacharya, who's not a native Indian, he is a South African, but then he has studied the Upanishads and the Vedas also very, very deeply. The language is, or the titles are in English, but then we understand that matter is Prakriti and spirit is Atma. And we will need to understand and, find the meaning through the selection that he has made. So, one may want to dispute the selection he has made, but we don't have the time for that, in the sense that you would need to have as vast a knowledge to dispute his selection. So we go with the selection. We may find that some of the elements selected may not be representative from our perspective, but nevertheless, what we have in these 108 selections is a clear demarcation, or rather, trifurcation between the three philosophies, which we will obviously get to appreciate and understand in its very, very earlier form. You see, these philosophies, as we understand them today, are highly refined philosophies, because Advaita was propounded in the 8th century. Then I think Vishishta Dvaita in the 11th century AD. I mean, all are ADs, and rather CE, Common Era. And Dvaita was in the 13th or 14th century, when Madhva was, in fact, the very important scholar out of Karnataka. So we will go philosophy by philosophy, because that is the way it is. Now, so that we understand broadly what to look for, I've now actually recorded, or rather I have transcribed a conversation which occurred between Ramana Maharshi and one of his disciples, where we'll get to broadly understand what are these three philosophies meant for, because it will help us then understand the selections made. So I will read it out, though you can also read it, but then definitely, listening is of value. So the disciple asks or states that the final state of realization is, according to Advaita, to be absolute union with the divine, which means that whatever you call Brahman, or whatever you call the fundamental ground reality of the universe, you, the individual, with your Atma will become one, totally merged into. It is like saying that a cup of water is being poured into a bucket of water. After that, you cannot find where the cup of water was once it goes into the bucket of water. So that is what is Advaita. According to Vishishta Dvaita, a qualified union. So Vishishta Dvaita just broadly may say that, look, the ground is the same, but you, the Atma, once you have got purified and you are eligible for that union, you will yet retain a certain amount of separation from the ground state. That is their thesis, saying that no human being can ever get merged fully with God. God always remains a little different. That is the position that is taken by the Vishishta Dvaita philosophy. So it's a qualified. Under some circumstances, things will happen. It is not something that is a free flow union like conceived in the case of water being poured into a bucket. Of course, you'll have to go into the technicalities of Vishishta Dvaita to find usme Vishisht kya hai, Advaita se Vishisht kya hai. So the whole thing, Vishishta, is the qualified union. And Dvaita maintains that there is no union at all. कि भगवान भगवान है, आप हैं, आप में और भगवान में कभी भी आप कितना भी जो है पूजा पाठ करें, जितना भी आप साधना करें, आप भगवान से अलग ही रहेंगे. आप भगवान के पास जा सकते हैं, but you cannot merge. So the water glass will remain a water glass and the bucket will remain a bucket and they can never ever be conceived to be moving together. So that is the position of Dvaita. So Dvait means two, and two cannot unite with each other. So the question is, which of these should be considered the correct view? This is, of course, post all the Upanishads, and this is a question of the 20th century. So Ramana Maharshi says, why speculate about what will happen in the future? All are agreed that I exists, that is, I, the ego, exists. To whichever school of thought he may belong, let the earnest seeker find out what that I is, because behind the I is the Atma. Unless the Atma is there, the ego will not exist. Of course, ego is representative of the ignorance about the Atma. So when you get rid of the ego, the Atma is seen. But you have to first deal with the fact that you are an individual with a certain Nama and Rupa. So Bhagavan says, or Ramana Maharshi says, find out what that I is. Then it will be time enough to know what the final state is, whether I will get merged with the Supreme Being or stand apart from him. Let us not forestall the conclusion, but keep an open mind. So point being made here is, sometimes the discussion whether it is Advaita or whether it is Vishishtadvaita or it is Dvaita is a very, very theoretical discussion based on a future state, that when you become Pakka, then what will happen to you? Ramana Maharshi says, become Pakka, then you yourself will find out what will happen to you, because all the discussions on whether Advaita is true or Vishishtadvaita is true, Advaita is true, is all made by people. The discussions are mainly by people who have not yet realized anything at all. So he says, first discover yourself and then have this discussion. Then the further part of the dialogue goes like this: but will not some understanding of the final state be a helpful guide even to the aspirant? So the disciple is persistent, kuch to batao future ke bare mein. But Ramana Maharshi says, no purpose is served by trying to decide what that final state is, whether it is Advaita, Vishishtadvaita, or Dvaita. Why not? Because you proceed on a wrong principle. Your conclusion is arrived at by the intellect, which shines only by the light it derives from the self. Is it not presumptuous on the part of the intellect to sit in judgment over that form from which it derives its light? So what it means is, this decision of whether you are Advaita, Vishishtadvaita is made by your buddhi. And buddhi itself is powered by the Atma. So it is only a secondary source of understanding, not the primary source of understanding. Therefore, continuing the answer from Ramana Maharshi, how can the intellect, which can never reach the self, be competent to ascertain and much less decide the nature of the final state of realization? It is like trying to measure the sunlight at its source by the standard of the light given by a candle. The wax will melt down before the candle comes anywhere near the sun. Instead of indulging in mere speculation, devote yourself here and now to search of the truth that is ever within you. So you might think that after listening to this, what is the big point in even trying to understand from where the Dvaita philosophy is being inspired, from where Vishishtadvaita, we might as well stop and start meditating. But no, we must do this because each of these acharyas, Shankaracharya, Ramanujacharya, Madhvacharya, and the various acharyas have picked up some examples, picked up some phrases, picked up some concepts to derive the philosophy. Because in India, in the Indian darshanas, you cannot create something on your own. You have to source it from the Shruti. Shruti is the Vedas, and of course, we know that the Upanishads are a part of the Vedas. So, if you want to propound something, you'll have to have your source material from the Shruti. Otherwise, people will not accept you. So, these acharyas have sourced and have been inspired by some of the shlokas and some of the mantras and some of the concepts that we find in the Upanishads. And therefore, we are going to simply go back to what they were inspired by, rather than having a debate on which is going to be my final state, what is my belief, am I a Dvaiti, am I a Advaiti? That is something that we will not be entering into in this interaction. So now we have to then define what is Dvaita. So I went into the 2 volumes of Indian philosophy by S.
Excuse me, Raj.
Radhakrishnan. Yeah, sure.
Sorry, I had a question, Raj.
Sure,
I-
absolutely. I'll just stop the
yeah.
share. And, yeah, 1 minute. Yes.
So do you want to do the questions now or at the end?
No, no, no. You should ask your questions now because at the end, we will forget what the question is and we may have moved ahead. So please
Yeah,
stop.
that's what. Okay, right. So
Absolutely.
so so the Vedas and Upanishads. You were talking about these dates, right? That 8th century was Shankaracharya with Advaita, and then 11th and 13th century for the Vishishta Advaita and
Yeah.
Dvaita. So
Yeah.
so um, the Vedas and Upanishads were written much earlier, right?
Correct. Correct. Much
So
earlier.
so so how come I mean, so these are just based on uh, like Advaita uh, uh, was not there before. I mean,
No,
because
no. So it's not like that.
yeah,
So you see, there are Advaitic ideas. See, the Vedas are a storehouse of a large number of spiritual ideas. Okay.
right. Hmm.
There are numerous concepts that you find which are like all over the place in the sense that every dimension of thought finds representation in the Vedas. And from the Vedas, you have the Upanishads, where also you will find a large sprinkling of different ideas. Okay. Now, I am post the Vedas and post the Upanishads, probably 10 centuries down the line. Let us say I am 5 centuries below. Before Adi Shankaracharya, who was in the 8th century. So I, so somebody has thought, in fact, one of say Gaudapada, who wrote the Karikas on the Mandukya Upanishad, he is the one who formulated some of the key concepts of Advaita Vedanta. Okay. When you say formulated, it's like you can say that the Vedas and Upanishads are like phenomenon. I mean, just for the sake of argument, but nobody realized that there is gravity. So the falling of the apple is a phenomenon which always existed, but it was Newton who formulated the law of gravitation. So it's not that gravitation started with Newton. In the same way, it is not that Advaita started with Shankaracharya, but he put together the sources and
So
also
he
some of the
formalized it.
yeah.
He formalized it.
Yeah, he formalized it. He kind of
Okay.
made it into a cogent argument rather than splashes of intelligence which you find in the Upanishad. Yeah. So does that answer your question? So,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
all
that's
these
great.
have existed. So in the Upanishads, you have all ideas, and I'm only so if I am Madhva and I want to derive something which is supportive of the Dvaita philosophy, if I'm sitting down to write, what are the possible shlokas that I would have looked at which support the Dvaita philosophy? That's what we are looking at here. So he formulated it. So it's all a matter of um, information and formulation. So there's a lot of
This is
yeah.
yeah, this is kind of, it reinforces that the fact that Vedas were basically about inquiry into spirituality, inquiry into Atman, the nature of Atman, the relationship of Atman to the world and all that. It really was. It was not a dictation given by this is how it is, but rather inquiry, free inquiry.
Yeah, yeah. So it was, so the Vedas are all, I did some japa, I did some, tapasya, and, suddenly something came forth and I simply uttered it. Now, I'm not uttering it for posterity, for them to formulate something. I may say A now, I may say F, then I may say Z later. Okay, then subsequently, the people who heard all that found a way to put it in some logical sequence. So I'm simply uttering it at the end of my meditation. So, and it was all collected together, and therefore there is actually Vedas are difficult to understand because one shloka, though it follows the other one, may actually not be connected conceptually to the previous one. So it requires great amount of effort to understand the Vedas, and Upanishads are a little more logical. The Bhagavad Gita is absolutely logical, but even there we find that there are some gaps. So each and every successive Shastra has made things more and more clear. I would put it that way.
Okay. Makes sense. Great. Thank you.
Okay. So let me go back to any other questions at this point in time that anyone has.
This Dwitha philosophy is the more followed,
So
more
all of
prevalent.
Christianity, Islam, and ISKCON, and everybody who says, "Bhai, hamara devata ही सबसे बड़ा देवता है, बाकी सब नहीं है," that is Dvaita philosophy. Because you have said that he is the greatest principle, but do not recognize the principle behind that principle. And therefore, all the sampradaya fights that you have in India is, mera dev aapke dev se bada hai, correct? And that is the Dvaita philosophy. That's how they are. And you find ISKCON also the same thing, very clearly. And, they will not, if you say that Krishna is not the supreme, they will turn out to be absolutely, inimical to you. So what they do inside is good, but that ultimate principle is just like to a Christian, say Christ is the ultimate. To a Muslim, Allah is the ultimate. If you say anything otherwise, they'll get upset. Even in the case of sampradayas in India, which are Dvaita, they will get upset, like Veerashaivism.
No, Raj, it's not to the same extent. It's not like that. I mean, the sampradayas don't like a Muslim
the
will fight with
extreme
a
elements.
non-Muslim. It's
Yeah,
not to the same extent.
it's not as bad as the Abrahamic religions, but
Right.
then it used to be, you must understand that, right now it has all got toned down among the sampradayas in Hinduism, but at some point in time, it also used to be. But of course, there was never any killing or anything. There was only philosophical fighting, a lot of
Yeah.
philosophical fighting, and intermarriages never used to happen between the sampradayas. So that used to be there, that has been accepted. But yes, I do agree, when you compare it to the absolute hatred that Abrahamic religions have, definitely not like that. It was all that भाईचारा है, लेकिन मैं आपके बात से कभी जो है मानूंगा नहीं, kind of stuff.
But the majority of Indians, they follow Advaita philosophy.
See, after Shankaracharya came and he kind of standardized everything.
Right. He was that kind of genius.
Yeah,
we regard him too much. So that's why
Yeah.
everybody, he became a big star for us.
So it's like saying that in science, you have to say that you have read Einstein and you understand E is equal to mc square. Otherwise, you're not a scientist of any value. So in the same way, even if you don't agree with Einstein, and Einstein obviously has made some mistakes, and there are formulations which have later not been proved empirically, yet Einstein is the standard. In the same way, Adi Shankara has become the standard. So anybody who wants to understand Indian philosophy has to read him. And if you disagree with him, you have to first read him to disagree with him. So he's the standard. And he's a brilliant genius. Absolutely.
Is any hierarchy of lords is established officially? Any hierarchy level of the gods at the?
No, because boss.
No, all are equal.
All gods are equal, and
Yes.
all gods emerge from Brahman. Correct. Brahman is the ground state, and therefore there is no hierarchy. But if I am a Dvaiti, then I will say that my God is always the highest God. Correct. So, and that is why what Shankaracharya did was he also established the Shanmatha, that is, you have Shaivism, you have Shaktism, you have Ganapatyam, which is, worship of Ganapati, you have Kaumara, you have Vaishnavism, and then you have Shaktism. So these are the 6 sampradayas that you have, where it is allowed to regard your particular deity as a supreme deity. वो सब Brahman के someone's
Vishwarup, put off your mic.
Oh, I'm going to mute him. Yeah, I've muted him. Yeah,
तो
yeah.
अभी तक तो मैंने 3 ही सुने थे, वैष्णविज्म, शक्तिज्म एंड शैविज्म. अभी पता चला कि 6 हैं.
6 हैं. It is, in fact, Adi Shankaracharya is called Shanmatha Sthapaka. उन्होंने 6 मतों की स्थापना की. कौन-कौन से मत हैं? Saurya Mat, which is the worship of sun god. Kaumara Mat, which is the worship of Kumara or Skanda. Ganapatya Mat, which is the worship of Ganapati. Shaiva Mat we understand, Vaishnava Mat we understand, and Shakti Mat. Shakti Mat is Devi or Shakti. तो ये
कौमार
6 मत,
क्या आपने बताया? कौमार
कौमार तो स्कंद है ना, स्कंद बोले तो गणपति के छोटे भाई, शिव के
ओके
दूसरे बेटे
ओके
स्कंदा और कुमारा और सुब्रमण्य, ये 3 नाम है। तो ये 6, these 6 streams of tradition will cover the entire Indian subcontinent. जिन जिनको जो जो प्रे करना है, they can do to any one of this, and within this you can say that boss Shiva is the greatest, because the whole formulation of Adi Shankara is Shiva the greatest, or Vishnu the greatest, or Ganapati the greatest, or Sun God the greatest, all merge at a higher level called Brahman, which is the basis of the universe.
इनफैक्ट आई वाज अबाउट टू रिक्वेस्ट कि एक सेशन जो है ना इस पे भी होना चाहिए। आई वाज थिंकिंग अबाउट शैविज्म एंड वैष्णविज्म, क्योंकि जो कश्मीर शैविज्म में जैसे आपने प्रेजेंटेशन दिया था, दैट वाज बॉदरिंग माय माइंड कि कश्मीर शैविज्म में क्या था इंपॉर्टेंस है कि व्हाई इट कॉल्ड कश्मीर शैविज्म।
In fact, it is called Shiva Dwitha.
Anyway, we will be debating from this topic now, so we'll come back to our topic. This we can make a separate session.
Yeah, absolutely. So that is the logic of what we are saying. And see, please do stop me at any point in time where you disagree, or my statements go a little here and there. And it is a helpful way of getting to understand the topic. Okay. So I think again someone's not.
I think Vishwaroop mic.
Yeah, I've just muted you. I don't know, there's some background sound, but it's okay. You can unmute yourself also. So as per the Indian philosophy text of Radhakrishnan, Teacher's Day Radhakrishnan as I call him, ये 5 चीजें जो हैं भिन्न हैं, और ये कभी जो हैं इनमें you will not be able to find a common thread as per the Dvaita philosophy. से God, परमात्मा और आत्मा में एकदम फर्क है, फिर परमात्मा और प्रकृति में एकदम फर्क है, फिर आत्मा नंबर 3, आत्मा एंड प्रकृति में फर्क है, एक आत्मा और दूसरे आत्मा में फर्क है, एक प्रकृति और दूसरे प्रकृति में फर्क है, and this is a unbridgeable gap as per Dvaita. Okay, so we need to keep this in mind as we explore the Upanishads. Okay, so now this is the logic of what we're going to do. There are 108 extracts. So with regard to Dvaita, there are 24 extracts, you can see, and the overall organization is an overview, matter and spirit, which is Prakriti and Atma or Paramatma. Now you must also understand that in the Upanishads, the terminology is very fluid. In the Bhagavad Gita,
Raj,
yeah.
Raj, can you stop? Can we stop? Just give me that the distinction which you have given. That I want to just make a note, because that is the basic thing, information. Can we go back to that picture where you have made the distinctions?
Yeah.
God and individual soul. Can we just go back? Can you give us 2 to 3 minutes to make a note?
Yeah. So
I think in the circulating presentation, Vishwaroop.
Yeah, anyway, it is there in the folder. So this is there in the Upanishad folder. So it's available. But then if you want a little more explanation.
Just 2 minutes, just give me 2 minutes, because that is the basic concept. That's where we are going to start our thinking process. That's what I just wanted to give.
No, absolutely. So I will repeat what I said, which is, God you can use many terms for God. So I don't know which term to use. You can either say Brahman, or you can say Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva. And then, you have the Jiva, which is yourself, which is us human beings. So, or you can say Atma in the language of the Gita. So there is one super being and there is one Chuttu being, Chota being, which is us. So there is one Mahabhim and there's one Chota being. So what this Dvaita says is, Bada Beam and Chota Beam will never ever be identified as the same. Unka DNA bhi alag hai, sab kuch alag hai. Why they say that? Of course, a matter of philosophy, but they say that the God spirit is different from the human spirit. That's point number one. Then point number two is that you see around you, you find the universe, you find the Jagat, you find Prakriti, you find matter. So Advaita would say that ultimately all matter also comes from Brahman. Though it has got the least amount of consciousness, uske paas buddhi nahi hai, chetana nahi hai, is what Advaita says. But in Dvaita, they say that these are two different things. It's like saying that my index finger and middle finger cannot become index finger cannot become middle finger. So simple. You know, these two things are different and can never ever be compromised to be or argued to be the same. So that's number two. Number three, individual soul and matter. So it is the same logic as God, number one, you know, God and individual soul and matter. So here we are. So individual soul and matter, which is your Atma and matter can never be the same, is what the position is, you know. So these are all positions taken, and the acharyas have quoted extensively in support of their position. And how did they arrive at this position? Through their meditation and through understanding the gaps in other philosophies. So the typical acharya will have done a lot of sadhana, would have read the Vedas and Upanishads up and down, and would feel that there is a gap in the sampradaya. And then he will formulate, again deriving the support references from the Vedas and Upanishads. Okay. Therefore, if you ask me, Vishwarup, on what basis this is being said, I don't know, because these are all, I mean, it is like
Definitions.
these are the facets of the philosophy. You have to go deeper into the philosophy to understand why they are saying this. So our purpose in formulating this is say, this is what we have to look out for. Okay, is there some statement in the Upanishads which is about God and individual soul? That is what we are looking out for in the selections that we will see. So are you okay with that, Vishnu?
Yeah.
Just a minute, Raj. I want to ask a small question. कि इसमें जैसे अभी तक हमने जो सांख्य फिलॉसफी में पुरुष और प्रकृति समझा था, वो भी एक द्वैत का ही concept है ना?
Yeah, it is a Dvaita concept. Yeah, because you see how the Bhagavad Gita merges. The Bhagavad Gita says there's only one Purusha and Prakriti, whereas in Sankhya philosophy it is multiple Purushas and so I mean everywhere there's a little distinction, but you are right. It is counted among the Sankhya or the dualistic philosophies. You are very correct there.
और यहाँ पर जो है ये तीन चीजें अलग अलग दिख रही हैं, गॉड, सोल और मैटर. तो इसको हम कैसे इंटरप्रेट करते हैं?
So God is Paramatma, soul is Atma, matter is Prakriti.
एक्चुअली गॉड को इन्होंने दो पार्ट में डिवाइड कर दिया है. मेरे ख्याल से गॉड को इन्होंने गॉड एंड सोल सेपरेट कर दिया है द्वैत में, और अद्वैत में दैट इज अ कॉमन थिंग, एंड मैटर वाज एनीवे इट वाज सेपरेट.
Correct. So let's not, so at this point in time, let us not get bogged down by the philosophy, because that is a separate class that I can hold where we'll go in deep, we'll give definition. So at this point in time, we just need to understand that Dvait means there will be two entities that will be spoken about, which will be different from each other and cannot get merged into each other. That's the broad idea that we need to understand, because we need to appreciate the focus that we have. It is in finding the Dvait in the Upanishads, not the discussion on the Dvait itself, which is a further development from the Upanishads. You know, I've taken ideas, I've taken my source. It is like saying that
राज हमारे दिमाग में ये बात इसलिए आई क्योंकि जो फर्स्ट स्लाइड आपने लगाई थी उसमें द्वैत में नीचे पॉइंट्स में दिया था मैटर एंड स्पिरिट.
correct.
So that is means यहाँ के मैटर और इंडिविजुअल सोल को लेंगे हम उसको. Spirit.
Yeah. So yeah. So since they are taken from two different sources, the terminology is different. So what is called spirit in the first slide that I showed is what we are calling individual soul here or God here, either way. Okay. So yes, it is a good question that is asked, because obviously, you know, everybody brings in their own terminology, and we will have more fun when we go into the Upanishads themselves, because there they have multiple terminology. Okay. So this is where the Indian tradition of debate arises, because terminologies are always very, very vast and wide. Okay.
Okay.
So now to understand Dvaita, we have 24 selections. I'm calling them gem number 1 to gem number 24. So gem number 1 is on Prakriti and Atma, or Prakriti and Paramatma, or Prakriti and Brahman. Those are all later terminologies. We'll just take matter and spirit. Then we are splitting matter and spirit into only matter, which is Prakriti, which is 3 to 9 selections. Then spirit, which is 10 to 21. But spirit itself is broken down into a few subcategories, which is the gods, as he calls it, 10 and 11, 5 sheaves, आपका जो पंचकोश है. Okay, then waking state, जो जागृत स्थिति है, deep sleep, जो सुषुप्ति है, or death, which is marana. And then between 22 and 24, we have the life of ignorance. So what happens if you're ignorant of the relation between matter and spirit? That is what will be discussed again in 3 of the selections. That is the idea. So let me take the first. Now, before that, so I have gem 0.1 and 0.2, and this is taken from the Shvetashvatara Upanishad. So, and the whole idea is it's like saying, please give me your introduction. So you will say, my name is so-and-so, I'm so-and-so, I did so-and-so. So in the same way, if you were to ask the Upanishads to give their introduction, before we look at selections of Dvaita, Advaita, and Vishishtadvaita, what do the Upanishads have to say about themselves? So this is from the Shvetashvatara Upanishad, where we have this shloka. From the 5th chapter is the 6th shloka, which is Tad Veda Guhyopanishatsu Gudam Tad Brahma Vedete Brahma Yonim Ye Purvam Deva Rishayascha Tad Viduste Tanmaya Amrita Vai Babhuvuhu. Okay, so that's the bold statement that I've read. If you cast this into a sentence, because this is poetry, right? In poetry, like in the Bhagavad Gita, we found that the prose order and the poetry order is not the same. So if you make it into prose order, we have Veda Guhyopanishatsu Tat Gudam. So we look at the meaning also simultaneously. So Veda Guhyopanishatsu. So Veda jo hai, Ved hai. So in the Upanishad, that is the secret of the Veda. So jo Vedo mein hai, Veda is a very vast literature. The secret of the Veda is in the Upanishad. That's what this line means, or this phrase means. Veda Guhyo Upanishatsu. Usme chupa hua hai. Then further, Tat Gudam. और वो बहुत ही छुपा हुआ है. That is a secret mystery which is hidden. So in the Upanishads, you have the secret of the Veda, which is really the secret of secrets, something like that it means. Okay. Then Brahma Tat Brahma Yonim Vedete. What does that mean? Brahma is what? Brahma. Brahma is probably the name of the creator. Probably it is the name of the Supreme Lord as designated in the Upanishads. Then Brahma Yonim. So that Brahma is the source. Yonim is source. You know, that's the term that is always used in sacred literature. So Tat Brahma Yonim Brahma Vedete. So the right way to understand this is that this is the source. Tat Brahma Yonim Vedete. You know, this is, so the Upanishads are the source of knowledge of the Brahma, and that is how it is spoken about. Vedete means aisa kaha gaya hai. Then further, Purvam ye deva rishayah. Pehle, Purvam deva, older gods, rishayah, ye tatvidu. You know, all those who knew the secret, ye tanmaya, what did they? They became Amrita Babhuvaiva. वो एकदम immortal बन गए. So what do we have? इसका तात्पर्य क्या हुआ? That this is that secret mystery which is hidden in the Upanishads. For the Upanishad is the secret of the Veda. this is that which Brahma knows for the womb of the earth. So Brahma, जो creator है, he knows that this is the source of the the universe, and the older gods and rishis who knew this, they became Amrita. They became Amrita means obviously they understood the secret of the universe. So we have therefore in Hindi, perhaps it becomes a little more sort of digestible. यह वह गूढ़ रहस्य है जो उपनिषदों में निहित है, क्योंकि उपनिषद वेद का ही रहस्य है। यह वही है जिसे ब्रह्म योनि शाश्वतत्व के गर्भ के रूप में जानते हैं, तथा जिन पूर्व देवगणों एवं ऋषियों ने इसे जान लिया, वे इसके साथ तद्रूप होकर अमर हो गए। So this is how the Vedas, the Upanishads themselves talk about the Upanishads. This is gem 0.1. I picked this up because I found it's important to have a self-introduction from the Upanishad itself. Then I'll come to the second one, which is very interesting, which is also a part of the introduction. We have not yet got to the primary gems, but I found this to be very, very fascinating. So this is also from the Shvetashvatara Upanishad, but I marked it as 18 or 19, depending upon the text that you use. So in case you're going to refer back, you might find it to be one serial here, up or down. So what is this shloka? Yada charma vadakasham veshta yishyanti manavaha tada devama vigyaya dukkhasyanto bhavishyati. So the Anvaya, as you understand by now, Anvaya is the prose ordering. Yada charmavat akasham manavaha veshti yishyanti tada devam avigyaya dukkhasya anta bhavishyati. Beautiful statement. So yada charmavat, when charmavat, charma. So charma we understand. It's a Hindi word also. Charma means chamdi. So like charmavat, chamdi jaise. Akasham. So if you can fold up the akasha like a chamudi, which obviously we know is impossibility, veshta yishyanti, shall wrap around the heaven. So when you can fold up the akasha and wrap it around the heaven, when you're able to do that, then manavaha, that is human beings, tada, deva avigyaya, without knowing the devas, dukkhasya antam bhavishyati. So if you can fold up the heavens, if you can fold up the sky across the heavens, and when you can do that, that is when mankind will be happy without the knowledge of God. So since it is an impossibility to fold up the sky in the heaven, it is an impossibility for anyone to be happy without gaining the knowledge of the Upanishads, without gaining the knowledge of the gods. And therefore, the secret that was spoken about in the earlier shloka, gem 0.1, the value of that secret is being indicated here, saying that it is absolutely important for every human being to understand about God as explained in the Vedas and the Upanishads, because without that, you can never be happy. So look at the translation that we have here. When the sons of men shall fold up ether is the sky, like the skin, and wrap the heavens around them like a garment, then alone without knowledge of the Lord our God shall misery of the world have an end. So in other words, all the misery in the world is because we don't understand who our maker is. Who am I? That question is not answered. And who am I will lead you to the discovery that you are the Atma. But without the knowledge that you are the Atma, you will always be unhappy with the world and with what is happening with you. So let's again look for a greater understanding into the Hindi translation that we have. Jav Manav Santati Akash. Now, I don't understand the meaning of word Santati. So can anyone explain that to me? Santati, what does that mean?
Yeah, संतति का मतलब उनके offsprings.
Acha. जब मानव संतति, अच्छा संतति, okay, yeah, when sons of mankind. Okay.
Yeah, sons of mankind.
लिखा हुआ है, इंग्लिश में भी सन्स लिखा हुआ है,
सन्स लिखा है,
सन्स
लेकिन
ऑफ मैन।
I wanted to understand it in Hindi. So जब मानव संतति आकाश को चर्म के समान आवेष्टित करके धारण करेगी तथा अधोलोकों को परिधान के समान अपने ऊपर लपेट लेगी, केवल तब अपने प्रभु ईश्वर के ज्ञान के बिना जगत के दुखों का अंत हो जाएगा. So I think it's a very, very strong statement indicating the absolute importance of the Vedas. Very, very strong. So with that, we will actually launch into the Dwitha. And I'm saying 1.1 because there are 2 shlokas that have been put together, but the idea of the 2 is just one. So it is gem 1, but the first one. So we will find some Dwitha concept here. So what is the Dwitha concept? This is from the Upanishad 1.4. And let me read. See, I'm not chanting the Upanishad because I have not trained in the chanting of the Upanishad. I will read it out, which by itself is a little, actually it's not too difficult because basically Vedic Sanskrit and Upanishadic Sanskrit is not very difficult as compared to classical Sanskrit, more or less the same. So Tasmai sa hovacha prajakamo, yeah, tell me.
No, it's okay.
Okay. Prajakamo vai prajapatihi sa tapo tapyata sa tapas taptva sa mithunam utpadayate rayim cha pranan cheti eto me bahuda praja karishyatiti. So when you reorder this, we have sa tasmai uvacha. Usne bola. वो कौन था? ऋषि पिप्पलापाद. Pippalada. So of course, it is in the sequence of the Prashnopanishad. So it's always a dialogue, as we know. So the person who spoke this shloka is Rishi Pippalada. So what does he say? And he told whom? He told the student. Tasmai uvacha. Uvacha is a word that you're familiar with. Saha tasmai uvacha. Kya bole Rishi ji? Saha prajapati. Wo Prajapati, we understand, is the creator, that eternal father. Praja kamaha. Usne praja ki kamna ki. We say, yatha raja tatha praja. So praja is offspring actually. Praja kamaha, desiring children. Tapaha attapyat. So usne apna energy dala, usne apni tapasya ki. Okay. So here, obviously, Prajapati is what we later on call Brahman or the ground. So terminology difference. Okay, Saha Prajapati, Praja Kamaha, Tapaha Atapyat. Then he took his energy, he did the tapasya. Saha Tapaha Taptva, apne tap ke bal se pranam. Okay, he generated something called prana, which is traditionally regarded as male. And he generated Rai, which is matter, which is traditionally regarded as female. Mithunam is these twin. So twin creations happened at the same time, one prana and one energy. Utpadayate, utpadan kiya. Etau is, Dwiti, Dwiti vachan. Etau, these, for me, praja bahuda karishyati. So these two will further produce more children for me. This is the statement made. So we will first look at the translation and then we look at the implications of this in terms of Dvaita. So to him answered Rishi Pippalada, the eternal father desired children. Therefore, he put forth his energy and by the heat of his energy produced twin creatures, prana, life, who is male, and Rai, matter, who is female. These, said he, shall make for me children of many natures. Multiply in the typical biblical language, this is the equivalent of that. So basically, we have the production of 2 principles, matter and energy, which is a very, very interesting way of looking at the entire, creative endeavor. We will first look at the translation also. Rishi Pippalad ne usse kaha, परमपिता ने प्रजा की कामना की, अतः उन्होंने अपनी तपशक्ति को उत्पन्न किया तथा अपनी तपशक्ति की ऊर्जा से मिथुन प्राणियों के जोड़े उत्पन्न किए, प्राण अर्थात जीवन जो कि पुंसात्व है विच इज मेल, तथा रई तथा जड़ तत्व जो कि स्त्री तत्व है, और उन्होंने कहा ये मेरे लिए बहुविध प्रजा की सृष्टि करेंगे. ओके, now I have with me some of the commentaries around, so let us look at what some of the commentators say, and I think we'll have to, obviously we can't go beyond this one shloka, but then I think we made a good beginning. So in the Prashna Upanishad, this comes as the fourth one. I'm just looking up Prashna Upanishad. So matter and energy. Okay, so this is how many people have translated it. And so the logic here is that according to Shankaracharya, Rai in the text means food or the moon. Prana means fire or the ether. Shankara's interpretation is based on the Vedic notion that all food is produced by the influence of the moon, which is the cause of the liquid principle or rasa on earth, and the sun is what gives the energy. So actually this logic is better understood also with the second gem, I mean 1.2, and we will close with that. So what is the further logical statement after this? The production of the true principles. It is Adityo havai prano raireva chandrama rairva etat sarvam yan murtam cha tasman murtireva rai, which is in terms of the अन्वया आदित्य ह वही प्राण है. जो आदित्य है, जो सूर्य भगवान है, वही प्राण है. चंद्रमा एव, the moon, Rai is no more than matter because this moon reflects. So the logic here is the sun we can visibly see to be generating energy, and the moon only reflects the energy. It does not generate any radiant energy on its own, which we all understand, is no more than matter. Yat murtam, yat cha amurtam. So both that which is formed, murti is, which has got shape and size, we understand from our Hindi word, and amurti is formless. So yat murtam, yat cha amurtam, formless, etat sarvam. So the Aditya, so the Aditya, which is the energy, and moon, which is the matter, between them, matter and energy hold the potential for the creation of things with shape and things which don't have shape, murti and amurti. And this is the entire etat sarvam vai. This is the entire universe. Rai tasmat murti eva rai. Correct. So ultimately, this is also coming back to saying that form and matter are one and the same, because it is a modification of matter, and the form that you have is one and the same. So this is simply saying जो आपका मूर्ति बना है, जो form है, वो ultimately it is derived from the fundamental principle. So you may say that this is Advaita hidden inside, which is the first thought that comes to you. So that is how these statements are. They are not clear-cut statements, but I'm going to stop the share here and would emphasize the point that this is coming under the Dvaita categorization because it speaks about two things. It speaks about matter and energy called by the traditional names of prana and rai. And these are two things. Now, whether these two things are the same because the source is the same Prajapati, or whether you look at, so it all looks at, depends on what point of view you take. If you take them from the point of view of post-creation, then they are two different principles. So some of the supporting sort of, when Dvaita philosophy got created, I think somebody may have quoted this, and that's the reason why it forms the first gem. And that's where I would like to have matters end for today, but open to questions on the introduction, the 0.1, 0.2, as well as 1.1 and 1.2. Anybody's thoughts? So probably I'll begin with Atul. Atul, your thoughts? Atul perhaps is not there immediately. So maybe I will go over to Sunil Rastogi.
मोटा मोटा जो समझ आया, वैसे तो ऊपर से निकल गया काफी कुछ, मोटा मोटा समझ में आया कि this is how the universe is formed. एक प्रजापति, उन्होंने एनर्जी एंड मेल के फॉर्म में और फीमेल के फॉर्म में जो मैटर है, उन दोनों का कॉम्बिनेशन से वो प्रोड्यूस हुई उत्पत्ति, उसकी उत्पत्ति यूनिवर्स की। मोटा मोटा समझा संजय बासु की लैंग्वेज में कि मेल और फीमेल दोनों जरूरी है उसके लिए, तो मेल और फीमेल पैदा इस तरह से हुए।
करेक्ट, एब्सोल्युटली करेक्ट। आप जो प्रजा के पति है ना वो, तो इसीलिए उन्होंने जो है बोला। तो so the interesting thing is that you see, Prajapati did tapasya, and from the heat of the tapasya this came out. Now what kind of heat Prajapati had, we don't know. Correct, that is all tapasya.
मैं कल एक पढ़ रहा था, तो उसमें था कि जब ब्रह्मा पैदा हुए विष्णु के से कमल से, तो उन्होंने पहले 4 लड़के पैदा किए जो भाग्य जिनसे चाहते थे वो श्रेष्ठ की उत्पत्ति हो, मगर वो नहीं कर पाए। फिर उन्होंने 10 पैदा किए, और 10 पैदा में एक लड़की उसमें एक हुई उषस नाम से। जब उषस के साथ वो इतने वो हो गए, क्या कहना चाहिए, कि वो चाहते थे कि उसी का संभोग करके उसके साथ ही आगे करें, तो शी दैन अवे, जो बाद में शक्ति बनी, शक्ति का। और फिर उन जो 10 वो पुत्र थे उससे उनकी उत्पत्ति आगे बढ़ी है। तो आई वाज रिलेटिंग टू दैट, उससे कुछ लिंक कर पा रहा था मैं, अदरवाइज तो बहुत कुछ ऊपर से निकल गया। Probably जब जितना डीप जाएंगे उतना और समझ में आएगा।
Yeah. So see, Upanishads are very difficult to grasp, in the sense concepts are not defined. Concepts are just thrown at you, and your understanding of the concept depends upon who the interpreter is. And those are some of the interesting things that will come. So there is no definitive answer, but there is a commonly accepted answer, which is what we will try to go to. Okay.
एक मैंने अभी प्रोक्योर करी कल्याण का हिंदू संस्कृति अंक, तो उसमें इस तरह के लैंग्वेज में काफी कुछ हैं, चीजें हैं, कई आर्टिकल्स हैं which one can read time to time.
मेरे पास है, और वो इनफैक्ट I had 2 copies of it. I gave 1 copy to Sunil ji Garg actually.
अच्छा, हिंदू संस्कृति अंक
बस मेरे पास है, तो
मैंने अभी मंगाई है कुछ दिन पहले ही।
तो हम सब लोग सच्ची में एक ही थैली के चट्टे बट्टे निकले। So yes, there are very, very interesting articles there which give you, very, very good ideas, very traditional ideas. So I think it's a useful book to have with you, and keep reading. You'll keep understanding the context of many things if you read that. So let me turn to Sunil ji now. Sunil ji Garg.
मैं जल्दी से आज 4 श्लोक आपने करे हैं, तो मेरी समझ में पहले 2 श्लोक 0.1 और 0.2 तो उपनिषद खुद को अपने आप को इंट्रोड्यूस कर रहे हैं कि हम क्या हैं, और उसके बाद 1.1 और 1.2 में जो ओरिजिन ऑफ लाइफ हम लोग खोजते फिरते हैं वो क्या है, उसके बारे में थोड़ी सी जिक्र किया गया है। और ऋषि पिपलादि के बारे में मैं कल ही पढ़ रहा था, तो ये इनको कहा जाता है पीपल और आद, मतलब पीपल इनका भोजन था, ये पीपल की छाल खा के जिंदा रहते थे, ऐसा इनके बारे में प्रचलित है, इसलिए इनको पिपलादी ऋषि बोलते हैं। तो
पीपल मींस एंट, नो?
नहीं, पीपल मींस पीपल का वृक्ष का छाल खाते थे।
ओह अच्छा, ओके।
ये मैं कल ही सुन रहा था इस बात को, तो मैंने कल ही बाय द वे पढ़ा था, चांस की बात है कि आज वो रेफरेंस में आ गया। ऐसा होता है ना, हमारे देखो हम लोगों के कनेक्शंस इतने स्ट्रांग बनते चले जाते हैं कि हम उन्हीं मैटर को पढ़ते भी हैं, और कभी कभी पहले पढ़ लेते हैं जब वो आने वाला होता है अगले दिन।
Absolutely, wonderful, wonderful.
तो इसलिए आप उसमें ये बेसिकली मुझे एक बात इंटरेस्टिंग इसमें लगी कि ये जैसे वो बिब्लिकल एडम और ईव का कंसेप्ट है, यहाँ पर मल्टीपल एडम और ईव का कंसेप्ट है, जो कि प्राण और रई के फॉर्म में दिया गया है, और उन्होंने कई ऐसे जोड़े बनाए, उसमें कहा गया जिन्होंने फर्दर उनकी प्रजा डिफाइन करी, जिन्हें फर्दर प्रजा बनाई। तो ओरिजिन को उन्होंने ऑलरेडी ये बनाया, प्रजापति ने कई जोड़े बनाए, जो आपकी कहानी से पहले लड़का 10 लड़के और एक लड़की वाला आ रहा है, 9 लड़के और लड़की वाला आ रहा है, यहाँ पर उन्होंने कई जोड़े बनाने की बात कही है। ओरिजिन अलग अलग डिफरेंट फिलॉसफी ओरिजिन को अपने अपने तरीके से डिफाइन कर रही है, ये बात, ये प्रश्नोपनिषद से हमें पता लगा है।
Absolutely. So in fact, this whole logic of
today you have referred to Upanishad, एक तो श्वेत उपनिषद एंड प्रसन्ना उपनिषद।
उसको ऐसे बोलते हैं श्वेताश्वतर, बोलो
श्वेताश्वतर।
श्वेताश्वतर। उसको जरा एक दो बारी पढ़ने से आपके जो है जवान पे चलेगा। इट्स अ लिटिल डिफिकल्ट टू प्रोनाउंस। श्वेत अश्वतर, श्वेताश्वतर।
और दूसरा तो आसान नाम है उपनिषद।
हाँ, प्रश्नोपनिषद।
ये प्रश्न है या प्रसन्न है, क्या है ये?
प्रश्नोपनिषद।
क्वेश्चन।
हाँ, उसमें it's all about the questions asked by the Shishyas to a guru, and the answers the guru is giving is in the Upanishads called Prashnopanishad.
So these are the part of 108 Upanishad, what we so called.
Yeah, and these are also the primary Upanishads, you know.
जो 10 है, 10 जो बताए थे शुरू में।
हाँ, 10 जो हैं, these are a part of the 10, and this is that book, yeah, जो मैं I think I had sent you So I had sent, so this is that book, you know, Gems from Upanishads. This is that H.B. Phillips, who is that Vedanta Acharya from South Africa. So he has made these collections. So I sent to you what all the things we are going to be doing. So we will go one by one, because isko na kya hai? We go one by one, you know, there is no hurry at all. And I am of the opinion that as far as Upanishads are concerned, we should go as slowly as possible and not have any kind of target. We should have discussion, because understanding them is always a little complicated in terms of terminology. Okay.
Right approach. This is the right approach.
Absolutely.
अगर साथ पढ़ना हो तो ये वाली बुक आप लोग ले सकते हैं, ये गीता प्रेस की ईशोपनिषद और नवोपनिषद की बात की गई है इसमें। अच्छा, इसमें शंकर भाष्य के साथ है।
हाँ, so Shankar Bhashya is the next level, you know, where
नहीं, पर वो हिंदी में किया गया है, ट्रांसलेशन तो आसान है, हिंदी में ट्रांसलेशन किया गया।
Absolutely good.
हम लोग हिंदी बेल्ट के लोग तो समझ लेते हैं उस बात को।
नहीं, it's not that difficult. As long as the translation is accurate, that's fine. So therefore, I mean, you know, one more idea that I had was, so are we going okay? Is this the way in which, you know, the slide format is all okay? Anything that I need to improve so that we become better? Any feedback you can give on the slides? And
I think it is too early, because last meeting में मैं नहीं था तो मैं नहीं कह सकता, मगर it is too early I think to give any suggestion at this stage.
ठीक है,
क्योंकि जैसे जैसे हम आगे बढ़ते जाएंगे probably हमारी queries भी बढ़ती जाएंगी और हम उसको उस तरह से फिर मॉडिफाई कर सकते हैं।
Correct.
एक चीज मैं जानना चाहूंगा, जो आपने अभी रेफर किया था, क्या 9 उपनिषद सुनील जी?
ईशादी 9 उपनिषद।
ईशादी 9 पर शंकर भाष्य। ओके, क्योंकि मेरे पास उपनिषद अंक है, तो आई वाज जस्ट
अंक के अलावा ये गीता प्रेस गोरखपुर ने पब्लिश किया है, वो कल्याण ने पब्लिश किया है।
ओके,
तो कल्याण भी जो है गीता प्रेस का ही है।
उसमें ये मतलब उन्होंने स्पेशल बुक इसी पर्पस के लिए निकाला।
नहीं, कल्याण का ही वो उपनिषद अंक भी है।
हाँ, that may be even more commentary. इसमें सिर्फ शंकर भाष्य है।
ओके,
So it is useful, because you see the thing is, जितना आप ज्यादा पढ़ेंगे उतना और जो है समझ में आएगा, इसमें कोई कमी नहीं है। And these Gita Press books are all very, very economically priced, you know, all affordable. They are not costly books. They are good to have. मेरे पास भी पढ़ा हुआ है, उपनिषद अंक मेरे पास है, मेरे पास कल्याण के सारे अंक हैं, जो भी स्पेशल इश्यूज है ना, सारे मेरे पास है।
अच्छा,
मेरे पास, इनफैक्ट मेरे पास तो you can open one small depot for Gita Press.
अरे वाह, गुड, ब्यूटीफुल।
Correct. ठीक है बॉस, so we will end the session here today, and then of course I will
you
take
can
up...
have feedback from Rajesh and Vishnu also.
Sorry, Rajesh बोलिए।
No question there. It's all okay.
I have a lot of questions.
जैसे जैसे बढ़ेंगे आगे,
चलिए विष्णु आप बता दीजिए फटाफट। We have some time. We have 6 minutes. We have 6 minutes.
Yeah, go ahead Vishnu with your questions.
अच्छा, first thing is जैसा मैं देख रहा था, distinctions द्वैत में गॉड, इंडिविजुअल, सोल, मैटर, तीनों का बात बोला गया है। उसका जो डिस्टिंक्शंस है हम लोग नोट भी किए हैं, क्या क्या हर एक चीज में जो डिस्टिंक्शंस है, that has been clearly stated. Second में फ्लो ऑफ द्वैत जो आप दिए हैं उसमें एक चीज समझ में नहीं आ रहा है, मैटर स्पिरिट गॉड, देन 5 सीड्स क्या है एक्चुअली, ये पता नहीं लग रहा
क्या 5
5 SHEATHS सीड्स
कहाँ है? वो कहाँ लिखा है मैंने?
फ्लो ऑफ दैवत में है, और जो शीट अब दिया है ना,
That is
Then-
one
then
part of
waking-
matter to other part of matter.
नहीं वो तो है, इसमें वेकिंग स्टेट का पहले दिया है।
अच्छा,
Deep
5
wake-
शीट्स, हाँ ओके, वी आर नॉट एट का, वो पंचकोश, दैट इज अन्नमय कोश है।
वो क्या है एक्चुअली?
वो जब आएंगे तब करेंगे, बट इट इज बेसिकली अन्नमय कोश है, प्राणमय कोश है, मनोमय कोश है, विज्ञानमय कोश है, आनंदमय कोश है। सो सबसे पहले जो आपको दिखता है बाहर, जो आपको दिखता है वो अन्नमय कोश है, विच इज द फूड, सो आवर बॉडी कंसिस्ट ऑफ मैटर एंड फूड। तो हम जो भी हैं, जो भी हम खाना खाए हैं, उससे हमारी जो है आउटर फॉर्म होती है अन्नमय कोश। उसके अंदर क्या होती है? मनोमय कोश। मनोमय कोश तो हमारा मन है। उसके ऊपर क्या है? प्राणमय कोश। दिस बॉडी डज नॉट बिकम अलाइव, दैट इज प्राणा। सो दिस इज जस्ट माय हैंड, जस्ट जब तक हाथ में प्राण नहीं है। सो बेसिकली दी सीक्वेंस इज अन्नमय कोश है, प्राणमय कोश है, मनोमय कोश है, विज्ञानमय कोश है। विज्ञान बोले तो बुद्धि। आनंदमय कोश है, आनंदमय कोश is at the highest level. So these are all taken to be various. Okay, so let me put it this way. In terms of electronics, I would say that these are various gates. Gate 1, Gate 2, Gate 3, Gate 4. The first gate is Annamaya Kosha. Second gate is Pranamaya Kosha. Third gate is Manomaya Kosha, Man. Fourth gate is Vijnanamaya Kosha, Buddhi. Fifth gate is Anandamaya Kosha, which is above that. So these are ways in which the
Can we have
organization
a
of matter is basically how.
similarity like,
Bolo.
can we have a similarity like Sharir, Indriya, Man, Buddhi and Atma?
देखिए, मसाला वही है बॉस। सी that is all in the Gita with a great amount of clarity. Correct. Now we have not yet come to what the Upanishads say about this. So let's first come to the Upanishad statements. So we will see. Correct. See, this is only description of what we will do. It is not exactly what the Upanishads say. Upanishads will say it in a slightly different way, because Upanishads there is no standardization of terminology. That's what we have to understand. What the philosophers do is, what the acharyas do is, they know the intuitive meaning of the Upanishads as well as the Vedas, and they try to standardize the terminology so that there is no confusion among the followers. So, Vishnu, to answer your question, I think you can, at this point in time, simply know it's called the Panchakosha, which is a way of looking at the body. Okay, but then our interest is in what do the Upanishads say about it. So we'll come to that when we reach gem number 10 to 21, where we'll look at it one by one. We will be able to get.
Achha, Raj, in short, can we say that food is the most important ingredient which makes up, because you have started with food and then you have started with you have started the other areas of man's materialistic body. So maybe it may hint that the intake of food decides on the next matter which exists in the body. That's what a little bit.
So I would put it this way. Our body would not see, we know each other by the form that our body has, So Vishwarup has got a certain height, weight, whatever. I have got certain height, weight, face. So would all the others who are there in the group. So our height, weight, one is genetic. The other thing is it is based on the kind of food. I can become fat, I can become thin, I can become tall, I can become short. Of course, I can't become short, but then I may be short if I don't have enough food. So the most important thing for the body is food. And therefore, the first thing you see about the person is food. All your beauty contest is ultimately deciding bhai isne kya khana khaya. Correct. So Chanakya says that very clearly. Your body will tell in the longer run what kind of food you have been having. Straight away bol deta Chanakya.
Last 1 minute. Last 1 minute.
Yeah. Okay.
Achha, another okay, I will cut short. Gem number 2.
Last 1 minute, Vishwarup. Last 1 minute.
बोल सकते हैं. है। आप जो बोल रहे थे ना चिल्ड्रन के बारे में, आदमी का जो चिल्ड्रन के बारे में बोल रहे थे लास्ट जेम नंबर 2 में, उसमें एक्चुअली व्हाट उसका इम्पोर्टेंट इंफॉर्मेशन है क्लियरली अंडरस्टैंड नहीं कर पाए।
As boss, we will take it offline. We'll take it offline, you and me. Okay.
It's time to say namaskar.
So time to say namaskar. Okay, guys.
Namaskar.
Thanks, son. And we will catch up next week, and hopefully we'll have great fun next week too. Thank you.
Right.
Take care.
Okay.
Jai Shri Krishna.
जय
जय
श्री
श्री
कृष्ण।
Jai Shri Krishna.
Jai Shri.